Welcome everyone to the Burnham Brothers BJJ podcast, which is myself, Cooper, and my other son and Cooper's younger brother, Bodie, who's currently in bed, day off school, so he's chilling. Brought to you by Cartel Los Angeles and Australia. And our special guest today is, he's got a pretty impressive record, 2007 ADCC champion, 2005 IBJJF World Champion, 2005-6 CBJJO World Cup Champion, then transitioned to MMA, just had the average 7-0 record. None other than Mr. Robert Drysdale. Welcome, sir.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
How is
But first of all, are you starring in an upcoming film, like a caveman role or something?
That's it. We're doing a story about cave people, and I got it as hairy as possible.
Yeah, nice. Looks like you've got it.
The really thing is, I stopped giving a shit, and then I just want to see how ugly I can make myself. And it's the results are surprising. They're very impressive results. I'm turning into a very, very hideous human being.
Didn't you shave that off not long ago? Your kids shaved it off?
Yeah, Mike, they trimmed it. They didn't want to shave. The thing is, whenever I do shave, they get angry. My younger one will cry, and she hates me with my. She's used to have me having a beard, so Daddy has a beard. So she sees me if I shave clean, she's not too happy. So they only trim it. They never really, go full blown. But yeah, now I'm gonna start shaving my head bald. That's the plan.
I feel embarrassed by it because since we shut our gym down, I said, right, I'm growing a beard until we go back. You can barely see mine on the screen.
Well, that was kind of the thing is I'm going to let it grow until this whole thing goes back to normal. And the only thing actually, two problems, it gets really hot here in Vegas. So it gets uncomfortable. Yeah. And the other one is you can't really train with a long beard because they cannot grab the collar without pulling your beard. So that part sucks.
We used to have a guy train with us that had a beard, and every time you went for his collar, his lapels, he'd just end up with a handful of whiskers.
Nah, not fun.
Couldn't have been good for him either. Right. So how are things? How is lockdown in Vegas going, and what sort of things are you guys doing at your academy to keep moving along? I suppose keep everyone moving at some point.
Try to stay positive. It's not easy. This has been a huge financial hit on all of us. I just signed a lease a week before the lockdown into a new Anderson. So now I'm about to start paying rent on a building that is empty and I can't even open. It has 0 students. So you can imagine how that's going, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think that when really bad things happen, the only reaction is to laugh at the face of the abyss and just hold the line and just keep laughing and moving forward. There's nothing else to do, because despairing doesn't do much. I tend to, I think I still do sometimes, but my reaction this time has been more fuck it, and just keep moving forward, and whatever happens, and just kind of be content with whatever the end result is, and not create too many expectations for the future, and just, enjoy the moment and whatever may be, and let it be.
Yeah. Have you been doing any online classes or anything like that, or nah?
Yeah, we started with some Zoom classes and for our students, and then I said if I'm going to be live on the internet, I might as well go on open up on YouTube and Instagram. Yeah. So I'm opening up a broader audience, and I just finished about 30 minutes ago a live chat on YouTube, which I've been doing daily Monday through Thursday at 5:30 p.m. 5 p.m. Las Vegas time.
Yep. So
I'm not sure what time it would be over there, but 5 p.m. It's on my Drysdale Virtual Academy channel on YouTube.
Ah, cool.
And, so if you guys want to show up, participate, ask questions. It's a Q&A, basically. It's not really a class. I just show techniques and answer questions.
No, that'd be great. Actually, I might jump on there next week and have a look. It's about 10 o'clock a.m. our time, so. Yeah.
Okay, that works.
Yes, that's fine. I'll be at work. I'll just hide in the office. What was it like growing up in Brazil, in the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu scene there? I'd imagine it would have been pretty hectic. A lot of high level guys. What was that like growing up in that scene?
It's funny. Like I had never heard of jiu-jitsu in Brazil until Royce Gracie won the UFC.
Yep.
A lot of people have this impression jiu-jitsu is like huge, like it's like Muay Thai in Thailand. You know, they make that comparison all the time. It's not the case. Now you can say that. Now you can say that, but at the time I started training, then it was not very popular. Judo was popular, Taekwondo, karate, Kung Fu, all of those. But jiu-jitsu was something that we had maybe heard of, but I had never seen at school. I had no idea what it looked like. It was just a word that we associated with the Japanese martial art, but we know what it was. Yep. After Royce Gracie, because jiu-jitsu almost dies in Brazil many times, right? It makes a comeback in the 90s, mainly through like the Luta Livre Jiu-Jitsu Challenge, and then later Royce Gracie in 93. And that's when it really shows up on the scene. It starts really blowing up. It blows up in Brazil around the same time it's blowing up around the world. The only difference is in Brazil, there were more instructors. So it grew faster. There were more black belts available. So like things picked up a little bit faster in Brazil than they did in the US or Australia, for example, which didn't have a first black belt until years later. But but growing up in Brazil was fun, man. Like I wouldn't change my childhood in Brazil for anything in the world. As an adult, I'd much rather live in the US, for economic reasons, obviously. But as far as being a child, there was less constriction, there was less rules being a kid in Brazil. I grew up in a countryside, so it was outside big cities. So I got to we climbed fences, climbed trees. We get into trouble, get into fights, steal fruit from a neighbor's orchard, like we do stupid stuff like that,
Yeah.
And scrape your knees when you fall. You just rub it off and keep running. If you get beat up, no one calls the police.
Yep.
The word bullying doesn't exist. The word does not exist in Portuguese. It gives an idea of how
wow.
Yeah, you can't translate it.
Yep.
There's no translation. So it gives an idea of how Brazilians feel about it. It's like it's part of being a kid. Like, shut up, pick yourself together and go do it again. Now it's funny, they actually borrowed the term from English. They say bully.
Yep.
They borrowed the term from English because the word doesn't exist. But now it's a thing there. But growing up as a kid, it wasn't.
Yep.
So it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed every second of it and a lot of good memories.
Yep.
But, I wouldn't want to live there as an adult, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fair enough. We hear a lot, like talking to Cooper's professor, Tiago, who you're good friends with also, about you guys and on the comp scene when you were coloured belts, how many comps you used to do. Tiago said we'd catch a bus from one comp to another comp, and some weekends we'd do 3 comps in a weekend. I'm just like, what? Yeah. How was that? What was that experience like as coloured belts?
That was a lot of fun. And I got to give a lot of credit to Paulo Strecker for that. I don't know if you guys ever met Paulo, but Paulo was very unique amongst Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaches. In this sense, the most unique. But he would, if you had this much potential, it's almost like if you were like this, like if you were good, it's almost like to your detriment because it's like it's like the people who had no talent. He'd be like, okay, you're better off, because he wasn't on your case about you competing all the time. But he was a very special individual, and I really cherish those years because he made it fun. Like, generally speaking, I'm terrified of competition. Like, I'm the guy that can't sleep, and I used to cry before I go compete, like it was such a hard thing for me. But Paulo made it fun. I would want to go, not so much because I wanted to compete, because I didn't want to miss out on being with my friends and being left out of all the action, the fun, and the stories that would come from the trips. Right. So the best part wasn't even the competition. It was just like the dumb shit these guys would do on the trips. Like, it was just nonstop joking and laughing and pranks. And like, it was ghetto as it gets. Like, one of our guys, I'm not going to mention his name, but you know him. His name is Gustavo. Like, we didn't have money. Everyone's broke, right? Like, he would just be trying to, like, if people had leftovers from food in the restaurant, he just like go pick it up and bring it to our table.
Good old Gustavo.
But we do. It was stuff like that, and it was like we're always joking and laughing and having fun, and we're sleeping on like disgusting mats. Like, there's this one place in Niterói, which is just outside of Rio. It's called Caio Martins. It's where the Botafogo soccer club stadium is, right? And they have these old like gymnastic mats, and they let us sleep there for free, right? So like these mats were just like filled with like lice, like you name it. It was just gross as it gets. But that's all we had, and we still made it fun though. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
Now sometimes you can stay at a 5-star hotel and have a shitty day. We sleeping on like filthy mats and still having a blast, and like you didn't want to miss out. And I think that we did it mostly because of the fun, more than the competition itself.
Yeah.
We would rent a whole bus. We have a whole bus, like 30, 40 of us in a bus. And we drive cross country, man. We go like sometimes, one time we drove for 24 hours straight for one competition.
Wow.
So, yeah, some of the best memories of my life were from that period. And, me and Thiago were very fortunate to live that together. And we have to give Paulo a lot of credit for that.
No, that's good. That's good. And they were different times, like you're saying, describing what you slept in, like the conditions you slept in. That we didn't care back in the day.
No, it was you don't care. You got other things on your mind, and the luxury and the comfort is just not. They're not really things that you worry about. Man, what else, man? A lot of farting. Yeah. Gross,
I
man.
can imagine.
Oh man, it's like gross. Like there would be like snot all over. Like we'd put snot purposely on places where people were gonna put their hands like on the wall, and they just have the booger on their hand. We were dying. It was like the funniest thing in the world. Now looking back, like as a grown man, it's like, man, that was stupid and disgusting. But when you're 19, that's like the funniest thing in the world. Like it was so much fun, and it was just like it was a family, man. It was like a brotherhood. It was. We really cared about each other winning. It wasn't just lip service. It wasn't like when you said good luck or, you're going to kick ass, you meant it, and you were there on the mats, and you knew that when you stepped on the mats, those guys would be there with you. You knew that the second you stepped foot on the mats, you were not doing that alone.
Yeah.
And even in all the, I've had those experiences and that family sort of feel in my life in many instances, but I don't think I've ever had it like I had it with Maromba in my purple belt days. That was really a golden age in terms of like camaraderie. Like it's very difficult to replicate that. Paulo's a very unique individual to be able to do that. Like it's a beautiful, it's a beautiful energy that he created amongst his students, and I've never seen it anywhere else. Like it's very, very unique.
Oh, that's cool. That's really good to hear.
Was it cool back, I think it was last year, having the World Masters Camp? I think he was training in your gym with Thiago and everyone. Was that pretty cool to have them all there together again?
Yeah, 100%. Like it was fun meeting Paulo. I have his picture on the wall at the gym.
Yeah.
I elected not to have Helio and Carlos because I never met Helio and Carlos. I elected to have my wall the people who taught me jiu-jitsu. So it went Steve Da Silva, Paulo Strecker, Terere, and Leo Vieira. So that was my way of honoring my masters and the people who taught me. So I think Paulo was really happy to see his picture on the wall there. And we're good friends. Cool. I love him to death. And I always say when I go to Brazil, I'm going to visit, but it's always a rush. But last time he came and visited us, and, unfortunately we didn't spend enough time together. He came with his family and they wanted to enjoy Vegas, and you know how that goes. So, I don't get to see my friends when they come to Vegas because the Strip is a lot more fun than hanging out with me. The casino, nightlife.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But great people, man. Really good times.
One other question about that. Back in those days, like per book days, how many comps do you reckon you were averaging per year, roughly?
2001 and 2002 were very, very busy years for us. In 2001, I think I counted one. I collected 31 medals in 1 year.
Wow.
So that tells me I competed. I mean, not all of them had open. Yeah. So I'm going to go at least 20-some competitions, maybe 25 competitions.
Yep.
In 1 year. So it was like every other weekend. We were traveling.
Weekend. Yeah, that's crazy.
Sometimes, yeah, Chag was right. Sometimes we had 2 competitions in 1 weekend, one Saturday, one Sunday.
Yeah.
Drive as far as we had to, and it was an expense. There were no sponsors. It was just money out of our pockets. But you didn't want to miss out on the action. I think that was the real reason why we went. You didn't want to, be the guy who on Monday night class you'd be hearing all the stories of how the tournament went and compared to witness it. So you just
should have gone.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I think that was, and it's, at least to me, that was a big part of why I always made an effort to go. I just wanted to be part of all of it.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's pretty unimaginable for me, like growing up in Australia and competing in Australia. There's not as many competitions. So like imagining to compete like every second weekend is like crazy.
You know, it's here's the thing: the competitions in Brazil are not profitable. Like, I think that a lot of the people who run tournaments in Brazil, they do it out of passion.
Yeah.
I'm surprised if they made any money. Like, I think most of the time they're barely breaking even, but it's for love, you know. And I think that every country needs someone that does that. Like for where we grew up, we had Orlando Saraiva, who was Paulo's teacher. And he organized tournaments all over the place. And I doubt he's ever made any money from it. But he really loved jiu-jitsu. And I think that jiu-jitsu needs people like that. You got to find that one guy that's willing to make the effort just to help the sport grow. But it's problematic because it's expensive to travel. You know, it's not cheap, and people have lives. And it's a huge commitment to put 100% of what you make into gas and tolls and, you know, and registering to compete tournaments and new gear because no one's giving you gear. So, you know, it does help a lot. I think that living that lifestyle is a privilege. And it's, yeah, Brazil, I don't know how it is these days. I haven't been to Brazil in a long time, but I imagine that still exists. And it helps them in a lot of ways. It's kind of like being a wrestler in high school in the U.S. You get to wrestle every weekend if you want. So by the time you make it to college, you've had hundreds of matches. Yeah, way more than jiu-jitsu, by the way. Like the way they do it here in the U.S., like you have so many wrestling matches by the time they're out of college that like they have so much experience. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I hope that jiu-jitsu has that one day, every country, where people are able to get that sort of experience. And maybe the recipe, small tournaments, in-house tournaments, if we could get rid of the politics and just have people come together and actually support one another. It's very political because of the money. You know, I don't know if there's a solution out of that problem. There may or may not be a solution to that.
Probably not, because when money's involved, there's never really a solution.
And that's the advantage of judo and wrestling. There's an advantage and a disadvantage. Yeah. Judo and wrestling have government funding behind them, right? So as a coach, it's bad because it's hard to get that job, right? It's going to be harder for most coaches, and you're probably not going to get paid a lot. As a gym owner, I can make more when jiu-jitsu is privatized. It's like a niche routine kind of martial art. But on the other hand, it's, you know, you don't get that competition experience that you would get if you were a judo or wrestler.
Yeah.
Judo or wrestler, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Just going back to your gym, I was curious about the name Zenith, and also why you chose to be located in Las Vegas.
I'll start with the last one. Vegas is because, well, I attended college in Vegas after I finished high school when I was 17 years old. So I did live in Vegas 99 and 2000 before I moved back to train with Paulo. I was living in Vegas. So Vegas has been I have family here as well. My father lives in Vegas. My whole family on my mother's side lives in Vegas. On my father's side, I'm sorry. It's also the world capital for MMA. So it made sense for me to be in Vegas for those reasons.
Yeah.
What was the other question again?
What your Zenith, the name Zenith, where does that come from?
Okay, so that's an interesting story. So when Kavaka left Checkmat, he calls me up and he goes, "Hey Rob, like I want to do a team together with you. We get along. We have a lot of the same ideas. We have the same vision. Why don't we do something together?" I'm like, "Sure." And I can't remember if it was him or me. I'm gonna go it was him because I wouldn't have suggested that name, but he suggested a name called Zion. And at first it didn't really register, right? The problems that come with that word. And we created a shield right away. One of his guys drew a shield with a Z, and he loved the logo, Zion. That was it. We even had like Zion over the shield instead of Zenith, right? Yep. And it was only when I saw the logo that I go, wait a second. Like, this is a very politically loaded term. It is very offensive to a lot of people. You know, if you're an Arab, like, this is extremely offensive. And I have students who are Arabs. We have affiliates that are run by people of Arab descent. So, like, there's no way I can make them put Zion on their gi. And I'm trying to explain this to Kavak, and at first he doesn't get it. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Because in Brazil, that issue is not – it is not a non-issue in Brazil, right? It's not it doesn't carry the same connotation. And Kavaka being a Christian, like he thought the name was, was in tune with his beliefs. And in that regard, even though I'm not a religious person, like I would have been okay with it, but I didn't want a politically loaded term to be associated with our team. I really didn't like that. And I kind of put my foot down. I'm like, no, man, we can't call it Dead Zion. It's a horrible idea. But he loved the logo. So I like, man, he likes the logo so much. I think he likes the logo more than he likes the name Zion. So if I could come up with another a team name that has a Z in it, then we would solve that problem. So the first one that came to my mind is Zenith, because Zenith means like it's the pinnacle of a trajectory, right? So if the sun at noon is at its zenith.
Yep.
So it makes perfect sense with what we're doing. You're in trajectory and you're trying to reach the zenith, right? Like if you're an athlete, if you're a team, if you're a teacher, everything we do is to aspire to be the best version of our own trajectories. I'm not comparing myself to your trajectory. It's to my own. And once I get there, that's my zenith, right? So I actually think it's the most meaningful name of all the jiu-jitsu teams. We may not be the best or biggest team, but we definitely have the best name. That's for sure. And and that was it. And then it stuck. And we founded the team in 2012, and we're very good friends. A lot of good stories. A lot of work ahead. Like running a team is highly political, man. Like it's way more work than running a gym.
Yeah.
But we manage.
Yep.
Nice. That's cool.
You've been working hard on a documentary, The History of Jiu-Jitsu. How is that coming along? When can we expect to see it? Everyone's very keen to see it.
You probably get that question so much.
Everyone, I feel bad because I've been saying like soon for like 2 years now.
yeah.
And the real problem, here's the real problem, is the script. Like, how do you tell the story?
Yeah.
Because you got a story to tell, and that people are going to be excited, people are going to like it. The problem is, like, what do you cut out? Like, in a perfect world, we would have the funds for a 12-part series.
Yep.
In a perfect world. Because we have enough material for 12 episodes. We could do a docu series of 12 episodes, no problem. I mean, maybe not 12, maybe like 8 or 10, right? But we have tons of footage, and we can't use it all. So the question is, what do we cut out? Do we cut out, like, do we focus more on this character or that character? Do we focus on more like this storytelling? Like we talk a little bit more about the influence of catch wrestling. Do we talk more about the divorce between Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Judo? Do we talk more about Carlos and Helio's personalities and how they played a role in Jiu Jitsu? Do we talk more about Oscar Santamaria, the man who financed BJJ, and without him there would be no BJJ, it would have died? Do we talk about Pascual Segreto, the man who was adamant about having fights in the circus, and that's what got the ball rolling? Do we talk about the circus? Do we talk about Maeda and the other Japanese, and all these Japanese that are traveling through Brazil and like doing fights in circuses? Do we talk about their trajectory through Latin America and Europe? Do we talk about the jiu-jitsu boom early in the 20th century? Or no, do we talk about where judo comes from? Do we talk about there's so many different ways we can approach this. Because the origin of jiu-jitsu is too complex of a story for you to tell in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's been very, very difficult. Like we originally were going to start with the Sengoku period in Japan and then the Tokugawa era. And then we're like, wait a second, we don't know shit about this period. We don't have a soundbite for it. I was later corrected by a historian. The samurai had nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. Like, I thought they did. They didn't. And then I'm thinking myself, like, why are we actually even beginning here? Like, why don't we start somewhere else, right? So this same historian that helps us a lot, does a lot of consulting for us, he suggested that, I thank you, Mark. I'll talk to you later, okay, buddy? So he suggested that we start with Commodore Perry's invasion of Japan. So as you guys know, American, Navy shows up in Tokyo, or Edo at the time, open up the city for commerce, right? And Shogun says, no, we want to keep our ways. We will remain closed. They come back a second trip next year and say, listen, this time we brought cannons. You either do business with us or we're going to bomb you, right? Free market. And right? That's what they call free market at gunpoint. And the Shogun relents. Says, what is he going to do? What is he going to do? What are his choices? So he opens up, right? So there begins the friction between East and West. And one of the first thing that happens is a match between sumo wrestlers and American Marines. All right, so the Shogun selects 2 sumo wrestlers. Commodore Perry, either him or someone else selects 2 Marines. Maybe they volunteer, but they fight. And it's in this friction that we believe that the beginning of our story should take place. Because Jigoro Kano is not, and Judo are not product of Japanese society by itself. They're heavily influenced by Western ideas of education. They're not Japanese ideas of education. They're Western ideas, Western philosophy, the ideas, of sport. Sport is not a Japanese concept. It's a European concept, right? The idea of sports and physical education, they're becoming popularized around the world during this period. So Jigoro Kano is he has a mind that is like, he's Japanese, but he has a mind ready for modernity, right? So Jigoro Kano is interesting because he sits at the intersection of these 2 worlds, right? The Reformation that Japan was going through. And he was brilliant because he saw that there was a desire to preserve the traditional, but there was also rapid changes that Japan had to go through if it wanted to, if it didn't want to be completely westernized. So in a way, I think that he was like right in the middle of all this because, he created something that was accessible not only to Japanese, but to the entire world. Judo went out to become the most practiced martial art in the world. And he also he kept it very traditional in a lot of ways. There was a lot of Japanese ethics, I think, in Judo that survived till this day. You see the respect, the hierarchy, the cleanliness of the mats and the gis and like the politeness, all that. That's not Brazilian. Brazilians are very different. They have their own way of doing things, and in Judo, you see or that's not Western for that matter. Like, Jigoro Kano kept aspects of Japan in Judo, but he took a lot from the West as well, even from wrestling. So that's where we begin our story. And then the birth of Kodokan, and then Japanese immigration, not for noble reasons, but for economic reasons. They're leaving Japan, not because they're missionaries of Kodokan. They're leaving Japan for the same reason most people leave their home country. They want to make money.
Yep.
And many of these Japanese knew how to fight. And some of them made it to the Amazon. Brazil was going through the rubber boom at the time. So there's all these historical events that play a role in the development of jiu-jitsu, right? The Russo-Japanese War. Japan beats Russia. Who would have thought tiny Japan would beat Russia?
Yeah.
Right? So the Japanese use this as a marketing tool to sell not only, to say it was an article of curiosity to the West. So they're selling jiu-jitsu to the West using that idea of the small defeating the large. Tiny Japan defeats large Russia, right? So that whole thing about the little defeating the big, that is not new. That is a very, very old marketing tactic, and it worked. The world was the book where I got a lot of this information from is called Craze. There's a period that we call the craze of jiu-jitsu, and it was early in the 20th century, right? Many of these travelers made it to the Amazon where they're going to train some Brazilians. And that's where the story starts getting a little more complex. It's less controversial up to then, I feel like. And because everything we know up to very recently has been based off the testimony of Carlos Gracie. Mm-hmm. Yep. If you took every website, every Wikipedia, every newspaper, every magazine, every everything, if you trace back the origin of all the stories about the history of jiu-jitsu in Brazil, they all go back to one source, Carlos Gracie. And that's why it's a problematic source, because he had everything to gain from that narrative. Yeah. Right. Had it been, if you say something about yourself that detracts from your accomplishments, you're far more likely to be credible. But when you tell a story that, that gives credit to yourself, there's more reason to be suspicious. It doesn't mean that he was lying, but there's more reason to be suspicious. And once the research came out, and it came out after 2012, 13, when the Brazilian National Library began digitizing all their files. And that was like a renaissance of research in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu history, because now everyone can access these files. You guys can go on there and look right up. You can type in Carlos Gracie and boom, they come up. Yep. Now you have to dig through thousands of articles. You're going to spend a big chunk of your day going through articles to try to find something half decent. But was made available because of technology, right? So once we have that in our hands, now we're able to tell a story from a very different perspective. Like, wait a second. There was a lot of other people training. That's not exactly how it happened. And there's all these other guys that played a role in the development of BJJ, but no one's ever heard of them. Yep. So, considering that most people won't read all the academic work and all the research and not go into Brazilian National Library to research this. We decided the best way to get this story across to people and create a bridge between, you know, the most serious work out there and the public that is like reading stories from Wikipedia. The best way to bridge that world was a documentary film. Like, we truly feel that way. And we feel that we are in a very unique position in history because, as I mentioned, the research has been made available very, very recently. Prior to that, there was not a lot available, right? The most of what we know about jiu-jitsu history came after 2012, 13 with the digitizing of files. But during that period, you got to remember all these grandmasters who lived that period, they're all dying too.
Yep.
So in other words, it's like a little Goldilocks position, time in history. We got like a 5-year window there.
Yep.
And we came in right within that window. So when I think about that, I go, what a privileged position to be in, because 10 years from now, you will have even better research, but you're not going to have the grandmasters.
Yeah.
10 years before, you're going to have all the grandmasters, but you're not going to have the research.
Yep.
So we come in a very, very unique timing and, time in history to do this. And it was an accident. It was not intentional. I didn't do the math until much later, but I don't think that it's ever going to be a film that's going to be able to tell jiu-jitsu history as accurately and as richly as we plan on telling it, because they're not going to have the testimony. They're only going to have the files. All they have is newspaper articles. They're not going to have a single witness of those times. And it might be better in terms of production, but in terms of like credibility, because we have the grandmasters in front of a camera, we've interviewed like 9 red belts. Like, it's never been done.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, super impressive. I was watching the video with Grandmaster Armando. I don't know how to say his last name. Reed?
Reddit. I can't say it either. Don't feel bad. Portuguese. In Portuguese, we say Vridic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It would have been a pretty big honor to be able to learn some jiu-jitsu off him and interview him, no doubt.
Yeah, he was a very interesting character. He was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of favorites. Don't get me wrong. Like, that favorite ones for different reasons. But Armando was very genuine. That's why I liked him. At one point, we're off camera, right? And I'm recording everything with my phone. I have like some bombshells here that I'm holding on to. I'm like, I don't even know if I want to release them. But I'm asked for permission. But like our camera, like our film camera was off. I'm filming off my phone. And at one point he goes like this, I'm going to die soon. I'm going to tell you guys everything.
That's so funny.
And he was like he was totally at peace with it. You know, he was like close to 90 when he passed away.
Yeah.
He was totally at peace with it. He's a very happy person, highly intelligent. I felt that his vocabulary is probably the best vocabulary I have ever witnessed any Brazilian. I've never seen a Brazilian speak Portuguese so well. It was very impressive.
Wow.
Very friendly, very nice, a lot of energy. He wanted to talk. Like when we left, I felt that, I'm worried about him being tired and maybe wanted to rest. I think that had we hung out there for another day, he would have been completely okay with it. He had a lot to say. Like he was like Helio's, like one of these first black belts, maybe first, second.
Oh, wow.
No one really knows the order, but it might have been João Alberto Barreto and Armando Vridet at the same time. We don't really know who got their black belt first. Yeah. But he's certainly one of the oldest black belts alive, or was at the time we interviewed him.
Yep.
And he normally walks around naked. Apparently you see him in Speedos in the video. Apparently his students had to beg him to put his Speedos on because he just wanted to be naked, because he feels that's the natural way of being. Yeah. And he's like, till this day, I can't understand why people are so adamant about walking around with clothes. You were born naked. Why can't you walk naked? So he's a nudist, right? and he lives in a ranch. And apparently he walks around the ranch naked, but the neighbors can see him. They're like ranches nearby, and they can also see him walking around naked. They're all used to him being naked. And I'm like, oh, thank God he put his Speedos on. Because when he saw him in Speedos, I'm like, oh, man. But after I heard that, I'm like, okay, Speedos it is.
I thought you were going to say you got naked with him and walked around with him.
No, I would have, like we're going to have the opportunity to walk around naked with a grandmaster like Armando Vridet. Taking that opportunity, But he taught every day, taught class every day.
Wow.
Drove. He has like a mat area outside his ranch, still in his property, and he would drive there,
That's crazy.
Yeah, he had so much life to him. It's so sad that he passed away.
Yeah.
Because I really felt that out of everyone we spoke to, the one that most felt like a grandmaster to me was him.
Yeah.
The other one I was really excited to talk to was George Medee, who also passed away a little while ago.
Yeah.
George Medee might have played maybe the biggest role out of everyone, because many people in Brazil said that George Medee, who had lived in Japan for many, many years, when he came back, he was bringing back all those Kosen judo techniques, and he's the one who really started the technical revolution in Brazil. And the story adds up. We don't have evidence for it, but the story does add up. So George Medee might have been, even though he's like one of the less heard of characters, he might have been one of the most important ones next to Carlos and Helio, if not even more.
Yep.
But he was a very humble person. He didn't like his name in the press. We had Flavio Bering beg him to give us an interview. Flavio Bering's like, hey, man, these guys are doing a really cool film. They really want to interview. And he's like, no interviews. I have nothing to say. I'm a no one. He's a very humble person. Yeah. Never liked the spotlight. He's the opposite of, your social media millennial. He's the polar opposite of that. And for that, I admire him. But I think in some ways his humility did a disservice to the history of jiu-jitsu, because unwillingly, by not being interviewed, he actually hurt our cause a little bit. And we really wanted to tell his story, not just for his ego, not for his ego at all, really, but just to be accurate about how BJJ developed.
Yeah.
And by being silent, I think what he did was when you're silent, you allow the dominant narrative to take over. Yeah. And to me, that is a political stance.
Yeah.
When you know something and you don't say it, that's not neutrality. That is a political stance. You choose to be neutral when you know something that is valuable for that particular story. And I really wish that he had given us an interview. I was really excited to talk to him. From all accounts, he was like a true wise man. Like, he had a lot to teach, a lot to say, and he was very, very loved, but he was very, very private. So too bad we didn't get to talk to him. That was probably the biggest loss in the whole. The one thing I wish, if I had a time machine, I could have changed anything throughout the production, was to sit down with George Medee and talk to him. Like, I would have loved that opportunity.
Yeah, it would have been cool.
That would have sucked heaps that you couldn't interview him.
We're definitely going to have to catch up for a beer next time we're in Vegas or you're in Australia, because I love the history, and I could sit here and listen to that for hours.
Yeah.
Oh, I got stories for days, man. I got stories I don't even dream of. People fall off the horse if they heard some of this stuff. They would, because a lot of it is personal. There's a reason why I didn't want to talk about it in documentary, because it's too personal. And I never wanted a documentary to be about this character or that character. I think that was not the right approach. The documentary is about jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
So we talk about what are the events and players that made the bush that is jiu-jitsu possible. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is not a line. It's a bush. It's not linear. It's very complex. It goes in many different directions. It comes back. It's got too many influences for you to say it's this top-down linear, interpretation of the facts.
Yeah.
But I feel that the personal stuff is not relevant per se to the history. But if I were to make a documentary about this character or that character, I 100% would use this, and they would not come across as good people.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about not so much the history of jiu-jitsu, but what shape do you think jiu-jitsu is in now?
I think the coronavirus has been single-handedly the biggest cultural hit to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because what we do is the opposite of social distancing.
Yeah.
I don't know the effects, the long-term, midterm, and long-term effects of this. What I do know is that my daughters are scared of being near people.
Yep.
They know not to be close to people. And I worry that that's going to linger. That's going to be part of the new norm, is stay away from people. There are all these things that you interact with from far away. There's not going to be any human touch and contact. You don't hug anymore. You don't shake hands with strangers. I worry about that, because that would be a big hit to our culture.
Yeah.
But, as far as the rest of the sport, it grew. And even I used to think that it had BJJ grown the way judo did, it would have not have splintered. But even judo splintered. There's Kosen judo, which is ironic that the two, there's Kosen judo, which is they basically left judo because they didn't leave, but they created a niche outside of judo because they wanted more ground, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the same reasons, you know. And then there's Sambo too. So there was some splintering off of judo. Like judo did a really good job staying cohesive, but not completely cohesive over the years. And I think BJJ is at a point in its history where it is splittering. It's, you know, we see the rise of like a more no point submission only kind of rule set, gi and no gi. Now we even have American Jiu-Jitsu. I don't even know what the hell that means. I'm still like, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure it out. And I like Keenan. He's a great guy. I mean, he really is. I met him a few times. Gentleman, nice guy, smart, sweetheart. I just don't know what he means. Like, he's doing the same stuff everyone else is doing, you know?
Yeah.
I never liked the B in BJJ, to be honest, because Jiu-Jitsu is Jiu-Jitsu. No one calls it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil. It's an American invention. No one in Brazil ever. You don't go to China and ask for Chinese food.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Thiago, Coach Thiago, he said the same thing. No one calls it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
No. And funny, because when I went to Thailand and I asked for Thai tea, they looked at me like I was retarded. Tea? And I'm like, yeah, Thai tea. You mean tea? I'm like, yeah, tea. I got it. I try acting like my question wasn't retarded when in fact it was. But, you know, I understand why it was necessary in the beginning. I do think there's an argument for the B in BJJ. I don't think it's a bad argument. There are many, many cultural traits of Brazilian culture that have made it into the sport of BJJ. And I've witnessed them in Australia. I've witnessed them in Dagestan and Chechnya. I have witnessed them in Japan. I have witnessed them in Germany, in Canada. I have witnessed them in Scandinavia. And I'll tell you what they are. It's the fist bump. It's the acai. It's the surf culture. It's the streetwear. It's the relaxed manners on the mats. It's the hugging of strangers. You know, Brazilian people, for all their flaws, they're very warm people.
Yep.
They're very warm people. And I can't stop. Having had the privilege to travel the world teaching jiu-jitsu, I can't see how someone can tell me that there are not traits of Brazilian culture inside every BJJ gym all over the world. I can't see, like, how do you not see Brazil here? I saw it screamed at me. It really was like one of those light bulb moments. And this was Yuki Nakai was one of my favorite interviews in Japan. And even though he's like a little bit older than me, he's not like an ancient, but he is important because he is the ambassador for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Japan. He has a background in judo and shuto, but later he becomes assimilated by Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and becomes the president of the Japanese Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. I love that term for some reason. Japanese president of the Japanese Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. But he gave us a really cool interview. And one of the things I noticed when I went to his gym is when we went to the Kosen gym, the Kosen Judo at the Tokyo University and Kyoto University, you know, the black belts all showed up 30 minutes early. True story. Everyone's early. Their gis are immaculately clean. I am talking the cleanest gis you have ever seen in your life. The belts were clean. They even smelled good.
Yep.
Bowed, like they bowed. They were so respectful towards me. It's like some of them knew who I was. I was flattered. You know, they're bowing and everyone's so respectful. And like before class, all the black belts are sweeping the mats before class. And it was like a symphony. The brooms on the mats, I have a video of it, and they're sweeping the mats, and it was so beautiful. And I'm thinking, wow, man, this is truly impressive. And then I go to Yuki Nakai's gym, which is also in Tokyo. Everyone's super respectful, but people weren't on time. The gis were not that clean. The patches were coming off. People would sit on the mats and like with their legs open and take their time to tape their fingers while they're laughing and joking around. And that's when I was like, this ain't Japan, man. This is Brazil. Like, and it's everywhere I go, it's the same. It's like the relaxed manners is a Brazilian trait, you know? So you could make an argument for the B in BJJ because what makes jiu-jitsu so appealing to so many people, I believe, it's not just the technique, it's the culture. It's a very happy place. I refer to it as a third place. First place is work, got to go to work. Second place is home, you got to go home. Third place is the gym. You choose to be at the gym.
Yep.
Therefore, it must, by definition, be a happy place.
Yep.
And I think that one reason why it's growing so fast, it's not just because of the arsenal of techniques that it has available, but it's because it brings a very, very happy, relaxed culture, and it's a nice break from a stressful life.
Yeah, for sure.
So true, yeah.
And if there's one thing the Brazilians are experts at, perhaps better than any other people in the world, is how to make a joke out of problems.
Yeah.
How to laugh at life, no matter how bad things are. They're like, Brazil was on the brink of like a revolution or a military coup, or like the economic collapse. It doesn't matter. They're still joking about it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like too much, if you ask me. But it's a quality in a lot of ways, because I don't know the numbers, but I suspect that depression and suicide rates in Brazil are some of the lowest in the world. And I think it has to do with that attitude towards life of, no matter how bad it is, smile and move forward.
Yeah.
And because it's pretty crazy down there, man. Like I've lived there. Sometimes I go there and I'm like, I don't know how you guys manage, because it's enraging. The corruption, the traffic, the violence. Like, how on earth do we live here?
Yeah.
They manage to be happy. They just find a way to be happy. And I see some of that element of that happiness in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as a martial art worldwide. So I'm not married to the term Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or Jiu Jitsu. I never made a big deal out of it. I've used both. But American Jiu Jitsu just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I just don't see why. Like, I'm not. If it were a different rule set, you could maybe make a case, but it's the same rule set,
Yeah. Yeah, that's what doesn't make sense to me either. So we've only got a few questions to go, but one of them was I suppose the thing that's popped up in the last few years in jiu-jitsu is the sort of WWE style characters that carry on like pork chops on social media. And do you, I suppose the main one is Gordon. Are you a fan of that sort of stuff, or are you like myself? I'm not a big fan of it. I just think I look at, say, Buchecha. He's a great champion. Doesn't need to tell everyone he's a great champion. He just does it.
It's a different, I don't have a beef with so much with the Connors of the world, the Muhammad Alis. What I don't understand is people applauding it. Like, I get why they do it. They make more money. Now, you can agree or disagree with that rationale, but you can't deny that there is a rationale behind it. There's a logic behind what they do.
Yes.
Makes sense. You make more money. Now, I don't agree with it, but I understand it. What I don't understand are people applauding it. That I will never understand why anyone would think that sort of trash talking is good or should be rewarded. Like, to me, when I see that trash talking, I purposely don't buy the pay-per-view. I'm like, I'm not supporting that.
Yeah. Like,
I don't watch it. I did see Khabib and Conor because I knew Khabib was going to win, and like, I just wanted someone to shut him up.
Yeah.
and because he's a grappler, so like I knew he was going to get, was going to win. So, but other than that, for the most part, I do boycott it. I don't like it. It's a different approach. It's a Western and Eastern thing. And in Japan, I personally believe that Pride was great, not because of the rule set. Pride was great, and it was always going to be the greatest MMA event in the world to me because of the Japanese crowd. The fans.
Yep.
There was a respect there. It was a ceremony. It was entertainment too. They liked their pro wrestling, don't get me wrong, but there was a respect there. It was a ceremony, like in the West, I feel it's a bar fight. I think most fans look at the UFC as a bar fight. They give me blood, they don't see it in form of art. They see, two alpha males beating the crap out of each other, and unless there's a KO, I'm not entertained.
Yeah, like booing someone who's got someone on the ground using wrestling jiu-jitsu.
Very, very uneducated crowd for the most part. I think in a lot of ways I'm American, in a lot of ways I'm Brazilian, but in this regard, I think I'm more Japanese than American. Like, I like that respect. I think that jiu-jitsu has a social purpose. It's not just a make myself money purpose. We all got to make money, but it has a social purpose. And guys who are behaving like that, they don't realize how many little kids out there are looking up to them, and they're growing up watching that. And you've seen people be successful without doing that. Like, we've seen the GSPs, we've seen the Randys. You probably make more doing what Conor does, but I don't like it. I think that BJJ is problematic. MMA is straight out, it's a Western thing. Like UFC, even though they got the idea from Brazil, it is very, very it learned from boxing. It got its lessons from boxing. So they just continued boxing in a lot of ways, right? The culture is the same as boxing.
Yep.
But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu kind of sits in a weird position because it's Japanese and then it's Brazilian. And in Brazilians, with all their flaws, the respect is still there. People like Gordon Ryan get kicked out of gyms in Brazil. And I've seen this. I've had world-class guys try to train with us at Brasil back in the day, and we'd say no. And they were world champions. And we said no because we didn't like their attitude. People like that don't last in Brazil. They end up alone, right? Because, like, you know, there's an expectation for hierarchy and respect there that either from Brazil or they got it from the Japanese, whatever the case, but it lingers in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu culture in Brazil. In the U.S., less so. And what I mean by that is it's more acceptable to behave the way, you know, some of these guys are behaving. And, you know, everyone's like, oh, it's entertain me, you know, it's entertain me. Everything's okay, you know, as long as they're being entertained. And I'm like, man, have you ever seen Chappelle stand-up comedy?
Yeah.
That shit's entertaining me, man. Have you ever seen, like, Bill Burr? To me, that's funny.
Yeah.
I watch Chris Rock. I think he's hilarious. And I watch Connor talking crap. I'm like, all right, it's kind of funny. Not that funny. You know, if I want to see a fight, I want to see skills. If I want to see a comedy, I want to watch Chappelle. You know, so, you know, I think that the crowd is just so desperate for entertainment that anything's acceptable. They're just different approaches. Like, I don't think we can stop it. I think that there's an effort, an enormous effort to professionalize jiu-jitsu. The last ADCC was a clear demonstration of this. I think that they lost their aura of being special. They're becoming fight to win, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I like Seth and fight to win and what they're doing, but ADCC was special, and it was special because it was unique in so many different ways, right? It's an Arab tournament for royalty. This is something for royalty, right? It was an Arab mystique behind it. And it's been increasingly turned into, you know, it's looking more and more like a pro wrestling event. And I think we lose. To me, it's less and less special. Even though the level has gone up, technically it's going up. There's no question about that. In terms of its prestige, I think it's going to go down. I think ADCC is going to become less prestigious over time because it's going to become like every other professional event. If you're going to become like every other professional event, that means that other professional events can do what you do.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? They're not doing this. In my opinion, they're doing this. They're being like everyone else instead of maintaining that high elevated position of we're ADCC, we're untouchable.
Yeah.
You know, I think they're becoming more banal in that sense. I don't like it, but you know, I'm not the majority. You know, like I think I'm, you know, the minority here, and I accept it is what it is, and you can't change people's perspectives. I have my opinions. I hope that jiu-jitsu remains more Japanese than pro wrestling in that regard. I like the respect and the hierarchy, but I feel that even though jiu-jitsu is hard to professionalize, like there's not a single profitable event out there. I'll tell you that right now. I think Seth with Fight to Win might be profitable because he targets locals and ticket sales for family members. But, you know, like other events are in the hole. Like I know this for a fact because I've ran a professional event once. I've worked for ACB extensively. I know how much these shows cost. They're not cheap.
Yeah.
And I know how much these guys are getting paid. And I'm looking at the audience and how many tickets they're selling. And I'm like, there's no way these guys are turning a profit.
Yeah.
So is it sustainable? I don't think it. Maybe in the future that will change. But right now, every professional organization that has is constantly drawing big names, they're artificially run by external capital. It's not organic. And because it's not organic, I don't think they're sustainable.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Alrighty, we're almost done. We've got a couple of more fun questions to do.
Or could I ask a question?
Oh, yes, you can. Go for it.
Staying on the topic of ADCC, how was your first ADCC experience with everything?
I competed 3 ADCCs. The first one was 2005. I was invited. I never won the trials. A little privilege there. Like ADCC does favor foreigners. I got in because I have an American passport, so I got in as an American. They didn't ask any questions. Robert Drysdale, American passport, didn't ask any questions about the fact that I was living and competing in Brazil. I think that international feel to it, which I get. But personally, I think that people should be selected based off their skills, not their nationality.
Yep.
So to me being invited to ADCC, it has an element of privilege to it. I'll give you an example. They have 2 trials in the U.S. and only 1 in Brazil. I don't think that's fair, personally.
Yeah.
Doesn't even make sense to me. If there's a place that should have 2 trials, it's Brazil.
Yeah.
I think the U.S. warrants 2 trials as well. I think that's justified, but 1 trial in Brazil is ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I lost my second fight. I fought Anthony Parash, actually, my first ADCC match. I know he's on. And then I lost to Cacareco. Cacareco lost to Roger in the final that year. And then I ended up beating Cacareco the next ADCC by rear naked choke. And then I won ADCC in 2007. And then on 2009, I lost a super fight to Jacare over a badly timed guard pull. Dumb Drysdale. But, I don't have a time machine. I don't lament. It's okay. It is what it is. But I really could have won that fight.
How good could have Jacare been? Sorry to butt in there, but he seemed to be a bit of a monster, but didn't compete for very long in jiu-jitsu.
Because it wasn't the
No,
money.
he was very active. Blue, purple, brown, black. I think he went to MMA. He won a lot as a black. I think Jacare did compete. The thing is, some guys just stay longer in jiu-jitsu. They exhaust their youth in jiu-jitsu, where a lot of guys like Jacare, they move to MMA. It was common to make that move to MMA at that time, where now it's less common. Like Buchecha doesn't have to. He may want to. He can. Still young enough to do it, but I don't think he wants to be honest.
Yep.
He makes enough money from jiu-jitsu, and I think he's content with what he has accomplished over his in his career, which, he might be the most successful competitor of all time, gi and no gi, in my opinion. Like it's hard to find someone who has won both that much. There are people who won as much in the gi, like Burnham Alfacini has won close to him in the gi. And there are people that have done the same and more in no gi, but no one has done as much in both.
Yeah.
So Buchecha really, he's in a league of his own in that regard. And doesn't have anything to prove. I think he's done plenty. But, a guy like Jacare, I think he moved over to MMA to make some money and maybe to prove himself. And I think he's one of the most physically talented individuals I've ever met in my life. I think he was like a freak of nature in terms of his genetics, everything from his power to his speed to his, he works hard. Don't get me wrong, but not everyone can outrun Usain Bolt. Not everyone can outswim Michael Phelps, and that's just a matter. There's this other element there that you can't discount. You can't it's the one thing you don't get to choose.
Yeah.
Born with and then you can improve on it, but there's still a ceiling. There's a factor there, and it's not a very romantic. Because the romantic approach to sports is it's all will.
Yeah.
Even will might be genetic. There are many scientists who questions the will being a genetic factor. Some people have a greater desire than others, and that would be a genetic factor as well.
Yeah.
Your mind is not as you're not in control of what you do as much as you think you are. So it's complex discussion, but in terms of physique, some individuals stand out, by a large margin. Jacare is one of the fastest, most explosive, most gifted individuals I've ever encountered in my life. And that's why he had, not the only reason, but he had a very successful career because I think that played a big role in it as well.
Yep. Cool. All right. So our fast 5 questions we've got. Favorite submission?
Rear naked choke.
Cool. Favorite movie? If you've got one.
Changes. I think right now it's Inglourious Bastards.
Yep.
Closed guard.
Soon to be closed guard as soon as we're ready.
Favorite drink?
I like wine, all wines. Cabernet is probably my favorite. It's funny because I went out, I was in college a few months ago, and then everyone went to the bar to drink afterwards, and it's just I'm the only dude. It's just it was one of those gender study classes. It's all women, and then I'm the only dude there. There's 9 women and a dude, and they're all ordering beer, and I'm the only one who orders wine.
Times have changed.
I can drink sour beers. It's about the only beer I can drink. I drink Corona and Modelo's, but most beer is disgusting to me. Yeah. I like wine.
Favorite food?
Sushi.
Nice. If you had to only have one idol in your life, who would it be?
In life, in general, or
in general's fine.
In general,
do whatever you want to.
Anything, anyone.
I think my favorite human of all time is Professor Noam Chomsky. I think he's one of the greatest minds to ever walk the earth. And believe it or not, he's even inspired my jiu-jitsu.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Um,
Right. Our final question that we finish up on is tell us something that people would be surprised to know about Robert Drysdale.
I can give a few things. I can go on for a while on this one.
That you drink wine.
This might be a whole podcast. Let me see, man. I tried really, really hard to play soccer professionally in Brazil. I have played as much soccer as I've done jiu-jitsu in my life, probably.
Oh, wow.
It is surprising how bad I am. Considering. You would think I'd be a pro. I played so much. You know, I would go home like angry, man. I'd be like crying when I was a kid. I'm like, how can I be so bad? I know the light's horrible right now. I don't know why. I'm sorry.
You're right.
But, yeah, I just sucked at it, man. Like, it wasn't for lack of trying. Like, I didn't. And then I ended up being a goalkeeper, because when you suck at soccer in Brazil, they put you at the goal. And then I got decent at it, and I was okay at it. Like, at the goal, I did better. People looked at me, oh, you're American. You guys are good at basketball. You'll be a good goalkeeper. You go over there. So they just had me playing the goal all the time. And I got decent at it. I played for a minor professional league, for the junior league, the junior team of a minor professional team, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in Brazil, it's a pretty big deal. Yep. And I was on the bench too. So that was my biggest accomplishment in soccer. It doesn't sound like much when you say it like that, but it was very competitive. It was really hard to get on that team. But that was the closest thing I ever got to playing. I used to rollerblade a lot. I was like rollerblade on the half pipe for a minute there. I was getting pretty decent at it. And I was around the time I got into jiu-jitsu. So I used to rollerblade to the gym every day. That was my the Fruit Loopers, you know. But I was one of them, and I used to rollerblade to jiu-jitsu practice every day. And then for a while there was mountain biking, and mountain biking was just a lot of expenses. Well, that was one of those expensive sports I've ever, you could think of. Like, you're constantly buying new stuff, and mostly because your friends are buying new stuff, so you want to keep up with like how much gear they buy. What else? Man, I started playing the guitar during the Corona virus thing, the lockdown. So I've been playing a lot of guitar. I found that I've always loved music, but I just never really dedicated time to learn anything. And I think music will be part of my life for as long as I'm alive. I plan on, taking 15, 20 minutes out of my day to play the guitar. It's very peaceful. There's something about it that just puts you in a very, very peaceful place. No matter how stressed I am, if I have a guitar and I'm trying to play, and I emphasis on trying, I am very, very happy. Even if I'm the only one can then listen to the music that I'm playing, no one else seems to understand that is actually music.
That's the main.
I actually really enjoy it. I love books. I really think that if jiu-jitsu didn't exist, I would have gone the academic route. Even though the academic work is way too bureaucratic to my taste. Like, there's too much nonsense. I don't think there's a solution, but there's more editing and ass kissing than actual learning going on, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, I in that regard, it's not for me, but I'm a very curious person. I mean, I think that's like some of the things about me.
No, that's cool. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Your soccer really sounds like my dad's jiu-jitsu. Just never any. He tries really hard.
Hey, you can still beat him up, man.
I wish I could.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
I wish I could.
Oh, man, it's over. It is over.
I got two.
If I ever have a son, I'm gonna beat the crap out of him when he's little, so he remembers.
Yes.
He remembers. He's gonna be frightened by his old man for the rest of his life. Like, I can't beat that old man. I'm gonna be 90 years old with a cane, and he's gonna be terrified of me because I'm gonna traumatize him. His infancy, his childhood is gonna be terrifying. You're gonna get his ass kicked every day.
You'll be 90 years old, walking around naked at a ranch, probably. I
would do that. I might maybe sooner, maybe 45. I might start. I got a big lot here in my backyard. I might start doing that sooner rather than later. Clothes is overrated.
Nice.
All righty. Well, we'll finish up. I just want to, on behalf of Cooper, myself, and Bertie, thank you for giving us the time to enlighten us with some jiu-jitsu knowledge and more about yourself personally. We've always found you, like we met you a few years back, through Tiago and seminars through Jiu Jitsu, and you've always given us the time of day when we've met with you at comps and stuff like that. You're just a super genuine guy, and that makes it's big for me to have someone like that. And can't wait to catch up with you again once all this craziness is over and we get to come back to the States and have some fun and jiu-jitsu and catch up. That'd be awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. I had a lot of fun. Anytime. This is a pleasure. Thank you for the kind words. And Tiago always spoke very highly of you guys, and Tiago was like a brother to me. So, so I'm really happy that you guys are under him. He was one of the good people out there. There's not many of them. Yeah. But he's one of the good ones, So you guys got lucky. Count yourself lucky.
Yeah.
And thanks for this. I had a lot of fun. And let me know when you guys post it. Okay. And I'll share it on my social media.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Cheers, Robert.
Cheers.
Ha ha ha.